In this video, I am making Thanksgiving dinner for two from start to finish. So let's get it started. I invite you to this all-day Cook With Me Thanksgiving marathon. I'm going to start at the beginning by making my cornbread, and I'm going to work my way through all the dishes that I normally make for Thanksgiving dinner. There won't be a lot of talking, but there will be a lot of cooking. This marathon is a collection of my Thanksgiving or holiday favorites. So when I say cook with me, I really mean it. Watch or listen as you need to, but really cook with me. Back up the video where needed, but let's get it done. If you're new to my channel, I'm Denise Jordan, and I teach traditional homemaking for today's homemaker. So if you want to learn more about making and keeping a home, subscribe. I can teach you to be a traditional homemaker in an untraditional world. So here's my Thanksgiving dinner for two. I was looking at this counter and I was thinking there's not very much up here, but I'm used to having 15 to 20 people here for the Thanksgiving holiday, and today it's just going to be me and the hubby. So I've got all the food out and I'll let you see what we've got. But right here I've got my cornbread stuffing, and it is delicious. I made 2 pans of it. The other pan is over there, and I did take a little bit of a scoop out of it. And I will admit the hubby took a scoop out of it too. He was hungry earlier and couldn't wait. Over here I've got cranberry sauce, and it's just ocean spray whole berry cranberry sauce today. I just didn't feel like making my own just for the two of us. Right here I've got some collard greens that I cooked long and slow, and they are delicious. And then of course the star of the show is right here in the middle, and it is a very small turkey breast. It's just half a turkey breast and 1 turkey drumstick. So there's a little bit of white meat and a little bit of dark meat, and I embellished the tray with some of the carrots and the orange slices that was in the roasting pan, and oh my goodness, do they taste delicious. Over here is just a small bowl of candied sweet potatoes. And then here is my mac and cheese. Now this is a different one than I normally make. Since it's just the hubby and I made a mac and cheese that is very similar to the one that Chef John makes on Food Wishes with his lobster mac. I made the lobster mac for Valentine's Day one year for the hubby, and we loved it. And I thought this mac and cheese would be even better without the lobster, because I'm not a big seafood person. So I made that, a version of that mac and cheese for today. And I probably wouldn't make it for a very, very large crowd because the cheese is a little expensive, but it'll be great for us. And then of course some Jiffy corn muffins. And then here's my semi-homemade gravy. I used some of the solution that I used to baste the turkey with, and I boiled it so you don't have to worry about any botulism or anything like that, as well as some of the drippings from the roasting pan, and then some Heinz roasted turkey gravy. And the combination of the 3 is absolutely delicious. I think this might be some of the best gravy I've made, just because I had more of the pan drippings and more of the basting solution than I usually have left over. So here is our Thanksgiving dinner for two. I only used 2 kind of medium-sized sweet potatoes, but they still make quite a bit. And for the mac and cheese, this is supposed to make a serving of 8. And so what I'm going to do is cut this dish in half, and I'll put half in the freezer for another day, and then we'll have leftovers for a couple of days. And the same thing for the dressing. I'm going to put 1 pan of the dressing in the freezer, and then we'll have the dressing that we've already nibbled in today and for the next couple of days. Welcome to my Thanksgiving marathon, where I show you what I make and how I make it 2 days before, 1 day before, and then the day of the Thanksgiving holiday. Let's get it started. This video is brought to you by Aprondiva. Pretty and practical, we believe that an apron can be a homemaker's best accessory. Visit us at www.aprondiva.com. 2 days before, I like to start with anything that I can make ahead. Things like cranberry sauce, my cornbread for my cornbread dressing, and my collard greens are all make-ahead meals. So I will get them started 2 days before the Thanksgiving holiday. I'll leave the cornbread on the counter to dry out, and then I'll put the greens in the freezer, and that extra freeze on them will make them that much more tender. And putting the cranberry sauce in the fridge just allows the flavors to just meld that much better. Let's take a look. I am making homemade cranberry sauce, and the trick with this one is that it's going to have apples in it. And I'm really looking forward to that because I love applesauce and I love cranberry sauce, and what can be a better combination than cranberries and apples? So what do we need? So first of all, we need 12 ounces of fresh cranberries, half a cup of apple juice, 1 cup of water, 1.5 cups of sugar, 2 apples peeled and cored and pared. So I'll do that in just a minute. And then of course we're going to have a little bit of orange zest. So first thing I'll do is pour all of these cranberries into the pan. I'll add my water, my juice, and I'll add my sugar. Now I'll get these apples peeled. Now my mom used to be able to peel an apple and get it to come off in one long strip like a little rose petal. Well, I never learned that trick. And cranberry sauce is probably one of those really easy holiday dishes to make. And my family loves cranberry sauce. I love cranberry sauce. I have cranberry sauce probably 2 or 3 times a week, but it's usually just ocean spray. So now we'll just get these apples sliced. And then we'll put the cranberry sauce on to cook, and we'll just cook it for about, 10 or 15 minutes until the cranberries burst, and then start to cook down. Now we'll just dice these apple slices up, and they're nice and sweet. One of my friends said she made an apple pie, and her mom said it would have tasted better if she had peeled it. And she said that the directions didn't say to peel the apple, but said to pare the apple. She didn't know pare meant to peel it. So I thought I better make that clear. Let's add in our apples. And now we're going to add the zest of an orange. And that means we're just going to kind of take this little tool like this and just kind of grate the peel off of the orange. See how that's happening? And the orange imparts such a nice flavor to the cranberry sauce. Okay, so you can see the orange peel is mostly grated here. Now we'll put this on the stove and we'll let it cook. We'll put it on high until it starts to come to a boil, and then I'll turn it down to low and let it simmer on medium to low for about 15 minutes. So now let's just stir that just for a little bit. The sugar's kind of settled to the bottom, and I want to get the apples in some of that juice. So now we'll bring this to a boil, and then I'll turn it down to medium. So right now I'm just going to let it do its thing, and then I'll bring it back and let you see what's going on with it. It's starting to boil and it smells so good. I can just kind of smell that cranberry aroma wafting up. But you can just see it starting to boil and the cranberries are starting to pop. So I'm going to turn the heat down to medium. And then just let it cook now for about another 10 to 15 minutes, and we'll see what it does. Take a look at this and you can just see how the cranberries are really starting to pop. And then the apples are becoming really highly colored. But look at that. Look how thick that's getting. More and more of the berries have popped. So it's really thickening up nicely. I'm keeping a close eye on it, and the nice thing about this Curtis Stone Duradiamond pot is that it's not sticking. Well, this looks like all the cranberries have popped. It is nice and thick. I am ready to turn the burner off. I'm going to get this off the stove and put it in this bowl so it can cool. Just take a look at that. It looks really good, and the apples are still formed. Hot. But it's delicious. Absolutely delicious. Now the nice thing about cranberry sauce, it's one of those make ahead dishes. So you can make it the day before, put it in the fridge, and it'll be all ready on your holidays. So when you've got a time crunch and lots of things to do, make ahead as much as you can, and this is one of those things you can make ahead and it'll be perfect a day or two later. I like to make the cornbread from scratch for my dressing. It's not as sweet as the Jiffy mix that I like to make for cornbread muffins, so I'll make my own cornbread, and while I'm getting ready to get that started, I'll set the oven at 425 so that it can preheat. So when I'm ready to pop it in the oven is heated up nicely. What do we need for the cornbread? 1 cup of cornmeal, 1 cup of flour, 3 or 4 teaspoons of sugar, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, and then I'll give the dry ingredients a good mix. Next, I'll work on my wet ingredients. 1 egg and about 1/2 cup of milk to start. I like to mix the two together. Then pour them into my dry ingredients. I give that a good stir. And add more milk and then the oil until it reaches the consistency that I want. Then I pour it into a well-greased cast iron skillet. I keep my oven floor protected with copper oven liners. The oven liner takes the drips that happen with all the cooking that takes place during holiday time. When it gets too messy, I can easily replace it with another. I'll pop it in the oven at 425 for about 20 to 25 minutes. You know it's ready when you touch it and it springs back. It doesn't leave a dent. I start the greens by putting some turkey legs in to simmer. I just want to soften them up enough so I can slice a little meat off the bones. The cobblers I'm cooking are some I've grown myself, and I stored them in the freezer for just this occasion. They didn't completely thaw out, so they needed a good rinse to help the thawing process along. I'm also planning to use some homemade turkey broth, and it too needed a little help with the thawing process. I popped them in the microwave to defrost and then on the cooktop to completely warm up. The turkey legs are great to flavor the greens, and they're a bit more nutritious than ham hocks. So if you've got a family member that doesn't eat pork, turkey legs or turkey thighs are a good alternative to bacon or ham hocks. Once the broth is completely warmed up, I add it to the greens. I prefer using broth to cook my greens instead of water. It gives them great flavor. I also like to add a little carrot, onion, and minced garlic. I'll put that in about the last hour or so of cooking. And one ingredient that is an absolute must is sugar. It doesn't make the greens sweet, but it does take away the bitterness that can often accompany collard greens. Then a 1/4 cup of vinegar and a dollop or 2 of Heinz chili sauce. The chili sauce adds great flavor, but none of the heat that you get with hot sauce. Taste the broth, and if you need a bit more salt or sugar, now is the time to add it. I do this gingerly and in stages. You can always add more seasoning if you need it, but you can't take it out once it's in there, so take care with your seasoning. Then just let it simmer until it's as tender as you prefer. 24 hours before Thanksgiving, I will put the turkey into brine. Then I'll prep my veggies. That means I will chop my onions, my carrots, and my celeries very finely for my dressing. That way, when the dressing bakes, I don't have to worry about the vegetables not being soft enough. They will cook all the way through. I typically don't saute my veggies because as finely as they're chopped, they do cook. But you can always saute the vegetables before you add them to your dressing mixture. And I'll definitely be using some homemade chicken broth or homemade turkey broth. So I'll get that out of the freezer, put it in the fridge, and let it thaw out. But if it doesn't thaw out completely, Then I'll put it in the microwave to defrost and then put it on the stove on the cooktop to let it completely warm up. And I like to put the turkey into brine because the brining just makes it so much more succulent when it roasts. There's something about the combination of the spices that just kind of draw fluid and flavor into the turkey so that when I roast it, it is not dry and it tastes amazing. So let's get that started. So I needed 6 cloves of garlic. So I just mashed down on the garlic to crack the garlic skins. And then once those were removed, I pressed down on them again really firmly to just kind of smush them up. And then I used 2 onions. And since I am making brining solution and not stock, I discarded the onion skins. I always use Martha Stewart's brining solution. It just makes for such a juicy turkey. It's no fail. So I use this every year, but if there's something that I'm missing from the list of ingredients, I just sub it out with what I've got at home. Now that I'm ready to actually start the brining solution, I add 2 quarts of water to my pot. And then I add 1.5 cups of kosher salt. And here's where I added my apple cider, my cup of apple cider, since I didn't have the Riesling wine that Martha called for. I also added 2 tablespoons of whole coriander seeds. And then she also calls for juniper berries, but since I didn't have those, I put in a couple sprigs of rosemary, 2 tablespoons of whole black peppercorns, 1 tablespoon of fennel seeds, 1 teaspoon of brown mustard seeds. You can use black or brown. I had brown. And then I just gave that a little stir. And then here's where I'm adding my bunch of fresh thyme. And I had some fresh thyme growing in a pot on my porch, so I dropped that in, and then 6 bay leaves. And then I just give that a little stir and let it come to a simmer. And it has such an aromatic fragrance. Now it's time for me to get that turkey ready. So I go ahead and get that outer wrapping off of it. And then I'm going to remove the innards from the turkey itself. So as I rinse the turkey off, and I know that's controversial, but I do wash my turkey. As I rinse it off, I make sure that I take the innards out of the turkey. There's a few goodies in the neck cavity and even more goodies in the body cavity. And you want to make sure you take those out before you roast your turkey. I can't tell you how many people tell me that they cooked their first turkey and didn't realize those were in there and went to serve the turkey and those were inside. So be sure and get those out. And then I like to rinse the turkey over very carefully inside and out. And you'll notice that I've kind of moved everything aside on my counter. And then I'm putting those innards in a bowl so I'm not sitting that turkey juice and those particular germs on my counter. And throughout the whole process, I practiced good hand washing and washing down my sink. So now I'm going to put one of the largest pans that I have in the sink and then slip my brining bag in that. And then the turkey goes inside the bag. And my brining solution is cooling while I'm doing all of this, but then I'll cool it down even more by adding some water to the solution because I don't want to pour hot water on top of that turkey. So I'll add 6 more quarts of water to the brining solution because we need 7 quarts of water in all. So I just pour that in my solution, and it just, like I said, it just helps to cool that off. And then I give it a good stir just to make sure that the spices are distributed throughout. And then I'll just pour that in my brining bag on top of the turkey. And then I add in my onions and my fruit. And I like to use oranges, and sometimes I'll even use apple slices, but since I've got the apple cider in, I'm just using orange slices this time. And you want to make sure that your turkey is submerged in the brining solution. And if it floats up just a little bit, then you can take a dish and put it on top of the turkey and press it down and then close your bag. That way, all of the turkey is submerged. And then I twist the bag shut and close it with a zip tie. And then I use paper towels and not a sponge or a cloth for this cleanup, because then it's going to go right in the trash. Now, typically, my sister will make the candied sweet potatoes, but if I'm making them, I will make them the day before. I will also make my holiday green beans because these are 2 dishes that work beautifully as make-ahead meals. I'll put them in the refrigerator, and then the day of, all I've got to do is warm them up. So here are the things that you need to make this family favorite, and it's really not a lot of stuff. First of all, you need some sweet potatoes, and you want to try to get the longer, thinner ones because you're going to try to cut them in half-inch slices. So you don't want to have the potatoes to be too big and make them difficult for you to peel and then slice. You're going to need some butter, sugar, some lemon extract, butter extract, and then some ground nutmeg, and that is all you need. So let's get that started. The first thing I'm going to do is wash and peel the potatoes, and then I will put them in a dish, and then I will pour sugar over the top of them, and then add my spices and my butter. So let's get it started. Now, in case you're wondering why I bother to wash them since I'm going to peel them, but I just like to start with a clean potato. I figure they're pretty dirty when they come to the store. They've been handled by lots of people. And then as I peel them and I expose the flesh of the potato, if they're dirty, I'm getting that dirt on the potato innards. So I just like to wash them up first and then I peel them. Now you want to cut them in about half-inch slices because if you get them too thin, they won't stand up to the heat. So I rinsed the potatoes again. Now I'm going to put them in this baking dish. I'm just going to spread them out here on the baking dish, and then I'm going to add my sugar. Just get this sugar sprinkled all about, and I probably got about 2 cups of sugar in here. With the amount of potatoes that I've got about 2 cups of sugar. You have less potatoes, you won't need quite as much sugar. And then I'm going to sprinkle it with just a little bit of lemon extract. So I'm going to put my finger right here over the top and just kind of just sprinkle it like that. And the lemon extract is necessary. It gives it just the right flavor. Now I'm going to sprinkle it with a little butter extract. And if you don't have butter extract, you can use imitation butter flavor, but it won't be the same as the butter extract. Now I've got a 1/2 cup of unsalted butter. And I don't think it really matters if it's salted or unsalted. So I'll cut it up into some squares. And then I'll cut it up into smaller pieces and just dot the top. So now I just need to add a little bit of nutmeg. And I was reminded not to put too much, because if you put on too much nutmeg, then your potatoes will be brown, and you don't want that. You want nice orange potatoes. So sprinkle them with a little nutmeg. So now we're going to cover this with some aluminum foil. And we're going to put it in the oven for about 30 to 45 minutes. So we'll just see how it does. And then, after it bakes covered for about 30 to 45 minutes, then I'll take the foil off, then I'll bake it uncovered for about another 10 to 15 minutes. So let's go ahead and pop this in the oven. And if I didn't say it earlier, I've got the oven set for 350 degrees. I did preheat it. I let the oven heat up while I was preparing the potatoes. So now we'll just let the oven do its magic, and then we'll come back. Okay, let's take a look at these potatoes. Oh, look at those. Aren't they beautiful? Now that's what I'm talking about right there. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of spoon some of the juices over the potatoes. So I think because of the number of potatoes that I had in there, I had to bake them for an hour on 350 degrees, but now they're nice and tender. And I did go in once off camera and just kind of spoon the juice over the tops of them just to make sure they were all getting moist. So now I'm going to let them cook with the foil off for about 15 minutes. That'll just kind of firm them up just a little bit, and then we'll get them out and give them a taste. All right, let's get these out of the oven. These potatoes look absolutely amazing, just so amazing, and there's nice amounts of buttery sauce in the dish. Let's give this a taste. Nice and sweet, but not overly sweet. And the potatoes are just so tender. I love green beans, and pretty much I like plain old green beans, but at holiday time, I like to make them a little bit special. And my sister has the perfect recipe. She is the green bean maker, so whenever we have green beans for the holiday, she makes them. So she allowed me to share with you her special recipe. Her secret sauce, or shall I say secret ingredient, is a turkey tail, or shall I say turkey tails. She uses 4 turkey tails that have been simmered for just a little while in water, and then she slow cooks the green beans in chicken broth and pours in a little bit of that turkey tail liqueur into the green beans and lets them simmer for a while with a blend of herbs and spices. So let's get that started. And I am going to use fresh green beans, or shall I say fresh green beans that have been frozen. And I also like to use green beans that have either been grown in our garden or that have been grown in a friend's garden for the holiday time. So at Thanksgiving and Christmas, I like to have veggies that have been homegrown. So I've got just enough water to cover, and I'm going to let them just kind of simmer on the stove for a while and just let them tender up. So I've got all these little bags of green beans out of the freezer that definitely needed to be cooked. So I'm going to get them rinsed off. Since these green beans are fresh, and even though they've been frozen, they still count as fresh, they're going to take a minute to cook. So I'm going to go ahead and let them start to simmer. So I put in 1 carton of Swanson's chicken broth, and now I'll add in a few spices. I'm going to add about a half a teaspoon of salt-free vegetable seasoning, a little garlic powder, and a little onion powder. And then we're going to add in a little cracked black pepper. Actually, just enough chicken broth to cover. So I only put in a carton and a half of chicken broth because I am going to put in some of the liqueur from the turkey tails. So I'm going to let those green beans simmer for a while the turkey tail is also simmering. And then I'm going to put the turkey tail into the green beans. These turkey tails have been simmering for a while, so now I'm going to put them in the green beans. And then poured in a little bit of that liquid off of the turkey tails. Now I'm going to just let these simmer for a while. These green beans have cooked down quite a bit, so now I'm going to turn them off and take them off the heat. All right, so now let's give this a taste. It smells amazing. Got some green beans and a little bit of turkey here. It's really good. I'm thinking fresh green beans is the way to go. On Thanksgiving Day itself, I like to get up about 6 a.m. so that I can get my turkey into the oven. I don't like to cook my turkey all night. I like to pop it in the oven about 7 a.m. And then usually by 10 or 10:30, depending upon the size of the turkey, it will come out. And while it's sitting on the counter and cooling, I can get my dressing, my mac and cheese, anything else that needs to go into the oven or that needs warming up. I've now got the oven available to do that. We'll rinse this bad boy inside and out. Now I'm going to take a spice mixture of salt and pepper and rub it inside the turkey and out. But definitely want to make sure I get it all on the cavity of the turkey. Just rub that all around. And then all over the turkey itself. So I'm going to quarter these apples. Cut the lemons into quarters as well. And these are going into the belly, the cavity of the turkey. And then this carrot is going to go into the bottom of the roasting pan, just to add a little flavor to the broth. Because that broth is what you use to juice up your gravy. And I will cut this orange into quarters as well. This is going to go in the cavity of the turkey. And then I also have some large orange slices, which will just be on the bottom of the pan. So let's lift this bad boy up, and I'm just going to drop these orange slices. Oh, I didn't cut the celery yet. Again, just a big rough cut. Because I'm just dropping it in the bottom of the pan, and then the turkey is just going to sit on that bed of onions and celery. And then this fruit is going to go into the belly of the turkey to give it flavor. So I really stuff it as full as I can with this fruit. I don't put stuffing in the turkey anymore because of the chances of salmonella and that kind of thing. And then these carrots too just go on the bottom. So now the turkey is resting on a bed of carrots, onions, and celery. And then I rubbed it down with a combination of lemon and pepper seasoning, salt and pepper. Also rubbed the insides with salt and pepper, lemon and pepper seasoning, stuffed it with the fruit. And I'm going to add a quart of water to the bottom of the roaster. Now, why do I do that? Well, first of all, it increases the broth. And the other thing is that it kind of bathes the turkey in like a steam bath. So now the turkey's going to sit here for a second while I prepare the solution that I'm going to baste it in. So I'll be right back. So now I'm going to put a quarter cup of butter in this pan so that I can saute my onions and kind of melt the flavors of some of my spices. 1/4 cup of chopped onion, 1 tablespoon of dried thyme leaves, 1/4 cup of brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of lemon and pepper seasoning, and a dash of crushed red pepper. Maybe 2 dashes, but not too much, otherwise it ends up hot and you don't want it too spicy. And 3 cloves of chopped garlic. So now that these have started to saute just a bit, I'm going to add a cup of water and 1 chicken bouillon cube. You can also add a cup of chicken broth. Now we'll just let this cook. And this is what I will baste the top of the turkey with. And so it'll just kind of simmer just for a while, all while the turkey's roasting. So now I'm just going to make a couple little slices here in the breast. And I'm going to stick a little bit of butter down inside there. Just punch it in there. Then we're going to just dab some of this spice mixture on the top of the turkey. And one of the reasons why we keep this simmering on top of the stove so that it stays heated is because we are putting this brush that's been on this raw turkey back in the pot. So I'll set it back over there so it continues to simmer. And then we just bathe the top of the turkey with a little honey. Gives it a nice little glaze. And I'll put the roasting lid on top. And now let's put it in the oven. And we'll let it cook for about 3 hours. And for the first hour, I'll probably baste it with this solution about every 15 minutes. And then I'll just close the oven up and then just let it do its thing. And I'll do that about every 15 minutes for the first hour. And here is my turkey. It's quite brown. When you put the honey on it, the honey does brown it. And also when you put the lid on top of it, that also browns it quite a bit. To make this dressing, you need a pan of cornbread and a bag of Pepperidge Farm cornbread stuffing mix. I like the combination of spices that comes in the Pepperidge Farm stuffing mix. And of course, I'll add my own. But I like the foundation that it gives me. I'll also use a couple of cans of Campbell's cream of chicken soup and my own turkey bone broth, along with a few other spices. Depending upon what I've got going on, I'll prep the veggies the day before, or I might do it just prior to making the dressing. It just all depends. The combination of carrots, onion, and celery add lots of flavor, but I like to make sure they are finely chopped, so I use my Emmy food processor. That way, I don't have to worry about sauteing the vegetables. The bake time for the dressing is plenty of time to cook the veggies, so my veggies are not hard or chewy. I'm going to pour the dressing into a buttered baking dish, so I'll get that ready and set it aside. My cornbread has been sitting on the counter for quite a while, so it's good and dry. You don't want to use warm cornbread or your dressing will be heavy. Crumble up the cornbread and add the Pepperidge Farms classic cornbread stuffing mix and thoroughly mix the two. If you want to add salt and pepper or other seasonings, now is the time to do that. But be cautious because if you're using turkey drippings or homemade broth, it may already be seasoned. I like to add the veggies at this time because I can get them thoroughly mixed with the breadcrumbs. That's harder to do once I start adding the wet ingredients. My wet ingredients include the cream of chicken soup and the turkey broth. If you don't have turkey or chicken broth in your freezer, you can use purchased chicken broth or the Better Than Bouillon chicken base. Add more broth until the dressing reaches the consistency that you wish. Then pour it into your prepared dish or dishes. We're going to pop it in the oven and bake it at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 30 minutes. When it's just about done, I'll pour some turkey drippings over the dressing and let it bake for about another 10 minutes, and then we'll be ready to bring it to the table. The turkey drippings give it amazing flavor. All the seasonings that went into the basting solution and to season the turkey are in the broth, and now that broth is in the dressing. That's why I don't add salt and pepper or any additional seasoning while making the dressing. You'll want to bake it until it's golden brown and just a little bit crispy on the top. Okay, let's make some mac and cheese. First of all, you will need some macaroni, and I like the Creamex brand. You can use other brands, but I just always buy this one. 1/4 cup of butter, and you need 2 cups of carnation milk. And again, any kind of evaporated milk will do, but I always buy carnation evaporated milk. 2 eggs and 2 cups of shredded cheddar cheese. And then my secret sauce is a Heinz chili sauce. It adds just a little bit of zing, just a little bit of flavor. Doesn't make it spicy, doesn't make it hot. It just makes it that much better. Oh, and of course, a little salt and pepper. So now let's get started. Now I've already got my oven preheated to 350 degrees. So as soon as that water comes to boil, I will put in the 2 cups of macaroni. While the water's boiling, I'm going to go ahead and butter this casserole dish. That's the way it'll be ready. And you can use a dish this size, even a little larger will work out just fine. Add just a little salt to the water. And I'm going to go ahead and put the eggs in this bowl. Beat them just a little bit. This just saves me a little time when everything else is ready. And I'm going to go ahead and take just a little bit of cheese out of this package to reserve it to sprinkle on the top, because sometimes I can get carried away sprinkling the cheese and I end up having it all in the macaroni and none to just kind of garnish the top with. So let me just put a little bit, and I'll also reserve just a little bit of butter to dot on the top of the mac and cheese. I'm going to add my macaroni to this boiling water, and it should take about 10 minutes. The macaroni is just about ready, so I'm going to go ahead and mix these wet ingredients together. It just helps expedite things. And then I'm going to add my salt and my pepper. Now this is the thing. You always want to give it a little stir, because there's always a little water that's kind of tucked inside the macaroni, and you don't need that extra moisture. I'm going to cool it down just a bit, because I don't want to cook my egg, but I still need it to be warm. There. Now the reason why you don't want to let it cook too long is because the macaroni is going to cook more in the oven, and you don't want it mushy. So I still needed it warm enough to start to melt the cheese. But not so warm that it scrambles my egg. So now I'll get this cheese stirred in. See how that's just kind of starting to melt down just a bit? But it's all throughout the macaroni. Okay, now let's put in our milk and egg mixture. And this is the size of the dish that I like to pour it into. Let's get the butter in. I really should have put that butter in when I put in the cheese while the macaroni was at its hottest, but this will work out just fine. Now for my secret sauce, my Heinz chili sauce. And I just like to add just a dollop, just a quick dash. Stir it up. And it doesn't even change the color, but it certainly adds a lot of flavor. So now let's get that poured into the dish. You see how nice and liquidy that is? Now we're going to sprinkle some cheese on the top. This was the cheese that I had reserved to set aside. Now some people like their macaroni and cheese a little bit cheesier, so they like to sprinkle more cheese on top, and I think I'm one of those people. And then I'll just dot a little butter. We'll let that cook for about 30 minutes on 350. Well, I've had these in the oven, this one for about 30 minutes. This one's only 20, so I'm going to go ahead and take this one out. I'm going to let this one bake for about another 10 minutes, and we'll be good to go. So there you have it, golden macaroni and cheese that is just absolutely amazing. A Thanksgiving classic and pretty much a standard on the table for every Sunday dinner is mashed potatoes. They're easy to make and they're easy to reheat, so they definitely count as one of those make-ahead dishes. You can use mashed potato flakes like Hungry Jack and zhuzh it up, and no one will ever know you didn't make it from scratch. Or you can try my recipe and I'll even show you how to make gravy. First of all, you're going to need about 2 pounds of potatoes, and I'm just making enough mashed potatoes for 4. If you want to make a larger portion, then of course you're going to need more potatoes. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my garlic olive oil started. So I'm going to use about 1.5 cups of olive oil into this pot, black peppercorns, and about 1/2 cup of garlic, but I'm using all the garlic that's left in here because I've had this for a while and I need to use it up. So now I'll get this on the cooktop and then I'll just let it cook for a while. I want the garlic to cook until they're soft. So I'm going to let that do its thing and I'm going to get started washing those very grubby potatoes. I'm going to get this garlic strained out. And the peppers. Now I'll set that aside. Now I'm going to get my potatoes peeled, and you set them in a bowl of water like you peel them so they don't turn brown. And I just quarter them, and then just give them rough cuts. And I try to cut them about equal sizes so they cook evenly. And then we'll cover them with water and bring them to a boil. And we'll cook them until they are tender. We don't want them mushy, but we do want them tender. And then we'll add a little salt to the water. It should taste like ocean water, so it should be pretty salty. And we're going to cook these potatoes until they're fork tender. And I'll show you what that means in just a little bit. Now that the potatoes are boiling, I'm going to get my butter and cream mixture put together. And I'm using 1.5 sticks of butter, which is about 12 tablespoons. Because I'm going to add a little bit of our garlic olive oil. And as soon as the butter is all melted, I'm going to add in my garlic. I'm going to squeeze in some garlic into the butter. And this is unsalted butter. As you can see, I salted the water for the potatoes quite heavily. I wanted it to taste like the ocean. But remember, I'm going to be pouring that water off. But that was my opportunity to season the potatoes. It'll absorb some of that salt. Now I'm going to add my garlic. Just going to press that in. Now I'm just going to stir that in and let that garlic cook off just a little bit. And my potatoes are bubbling away, so they should be about fork tender now. Now I'm going to add just a touch of my olive oil, my garlic olive oil that I put together. That'll just add a little bit more garlicky flavor. And I'm going to add my cream. Now if you want to try to cut the fat, you can use milk instead of cream, but when I'm making mashed potatoes and I really want to be decadent, I use cream. Starting to bubble around those edges, and I think it's about time to turn the heat off. Now I'm going to set this off the heat, and I'll get ready to get my potatoes out of the pot. Now it took about 20-25 minutes for these potatoes to boil, but now they're fork tender and they're ready to come out of the pot. So I will strain them at the stove, and then I'll put them back in the pot, and then I will add my butter and cream mixture. Well, let me just show you. Look at that. They're just fork tender. See that? So they're ready for mashing. See how easily they're breaking apart? And you don't want to cook them too long because you don't want them to get mushy. So we'll take these off of the stove and go drain them. Shake the water out. Now we'll put these back into the pot. Now we'll take our potato masher and mash up these potatoes. And I've got an old-fashioned potato masher. You can use your wire whisk, but I like doing it the old school way. And then once they're good and mashed, I will add my cream and butter mixture. And remember, we heated up the cream and the butter because we don't want to add cold milk or cold cream to hot potatoes. Okay, so let's start adding some of this in. And it's getting so creamy already. I think now might be time to switch to my wire whisk. I've gotten them good and mashed, and now as I add my cream and butter, and I'm adding it in portions, not just all at once, because it may turn out that you don't need it all. Yeah, I probably don't need all of that. They're getting nice and creamy. Maybe I will add the rest. There's just a little bit left because it will stiffen up a little bit while they're sitting. And I will also add a little bit of salt. I've got about a tablespoon of salt in here, and we'll just see how much it takes. I'm also going to add some cracked black pepper. And if you don't want black pepper specks in there, you could use white pepper, but it doesn't bother me. And then I'm also going to add my Parmesan cheese. So let's get that in. And this is just looking so good and smelling amazing. You can smell that garlic aroma. So now let's get it plated up and we'll give it a taste. Okay, let's get this into a bowl for serving, and I tell you what, your guests are going to love these mashed potatoes. They are so creamy. So delicious. And I have just the right amount of salt in them for my family. So make sure you salt them to taste for your family. So, and I'm just kind of making some little trenches around, you know, just kind of making it kind of pretty. And then I'm going to wipe the bowl off just a little bit around the edge, because remember, you're serving this for a special occasion, And you want your guests to think, man, look at those mashed potatoes. So now that I've got this part done, I'm going to just trickle just a little bit of butter over the top. So I melted some butter and I'll just pour it over the top. So you've got the butter running into the little rivulets and the little circulets there. And it looks absolutely amazing. I'm expecting about 10 people over for Thanksgiving dinner, and instead of roasting a whole turkey like I usually do, I'm making a turkey breast. And I was lucky enough to find this turkey breast on sale at 99 cents a pound. So it's about 7 pounds. So this turkey breast cost me $7.21, and it will feed 10 people. And then I found this recipe online for a garlic herb turkey breast in the slow cooker, and I thought, that's it, that's what I'm making this holiday season. And the nice thing about cooking it in the slow cooker is that it will free up my oven, because when you're roasting a turkey, sometimes when you want to put something else in the oven, there's no room because the turkey's in there. So this year I'm going to have the turkey on the counter in my slow cooker. Most turkey breasts and whole turkeys will have a gravy packet tucked into the cavity. Be sure to remove it, rinse it off, and set it aside. I like to put mine in a bowl and set it in the refrigerator if I'm not going to use it right away. However, keep in mind that if you don't use the gravy packet within 4 days, you need to discard it. And once it's thawed out, you should not refreeze it. The most important thing when it came to seasoning with the herb butter was to loosen the skin without tearing it. I found running the spoon under the skin to be very helpful. The herb butter is going to imbue this turkey breast with great flavor. I reserved some of the herb butter to rub inside the cavity of the turkey breast while slathering most of it under and over the skin. Now I have slathered this turkey breast inside and out with the herb garlic butter. And now I'm going to sprinkle it with just a little bit of salt and pepper on the skin. And then I'm going to set it in the slow cooker and cook it on low for 5 to 6 hours or longer, depending upon how long I need it to cook, because I do want it to be 165 degrees Fahrenheit on the inside. So let's get this in the slow cooker. I'm going to set this down on top of the onions and the garlic. To top it all off, I dropped on some fresh rosemary and thyme. Now I'm going to cook this on low for the next 5 to 6 hours, and at the 5-hour mark I will check it to see if it's at 165 degrees Fahrenheit or not. If it is not, I will cook it for an hour or so longer, depending on what it needs. You'll notice that when I checked the temperature of the turkey breast, I checked it in a couple of places. This helped to ensure that the internal reading was where it needed to be. So I checked the temperature of the turkey, and it needed to be at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit, and it was more like 185. So it's definitely been cooked long enough. So I'll get these herbs off the top and then transfer it to a baking sheet. Let it sit for about 20 minutes, and then I'll put it in the oven to crisp it up. So now I'm going to just drizzle a little vegetable oil over the turkey's breast. I'm going to pop this in the oven for about 5 minutes and just let it broil. Now I want you guys to see that that turkey is browning very quickly. It'll be coming out of there in just a minute. So there's the turkey breast, and it is looking pretty good. And the skin is nice and crisp. Now let's pour off the juices, and we can save those for our gravy. So here's my beautiful turkey breast, and it turned out wonderfully, and the skin is nice and crisp. Putting that breast under the broiler for just a little less than 5 minutes worked out beautifully. So now it's time for me to make the gravy, and I'm going to get started by separating the fat from the broth, and I'm going to put it into this fat separator here. And you can see how the fat rises to the top there, and you can also see how it rises to the top there. So I'm going to pour this in this jar to separate it. You can see how it's separating it nicely. You can see there's fat at the top. There's a little bit of broth at the bottom. And I think I'm going to stop right there because I need about, maybe a quarter to half a cup of the fat anyway. So I'm going to set this broth aside and I'm going to come over here to the stove and make my roux to start my gravy. This video is brought to you by Aprondiva. Pretty and practical, we believe that an apron can be a homemaker's best accessory. Visit us at www.aprondiva.com. Gonna turn my heat on so that I've got a hot pot. And you can see here, this is mostly fat. I've got about 2/3 cup of the fat there. And I'm going to just pour that in to my saucepan. And I'm going to let that start to bubble just a little bit. And I've got about 1/3 cup of flour that I'm going to use as well. I'm going to turn it down a tad bit. And then I'm going to add my flour. I'm just going to give that a slow whisk as I add the flour. And you can see it's thickening up already. And I will admit I did taste the broth and it tasted absolutely amazing. So again, to make gravy, all you need is a little fat, some flour, and then some broth. And if you don't have broth, you can take a bouillon cube and put it in a cup of water, and then you've got a cup of broth that way. So I'm cooking off this flour taste. All right, so now let's add in our broth. And now we're going to let that simmer until it thickens. And if I decide that it's not as thick as I would like, I can always just add a little bit more of the flour. Put a little bit of flour in water and then stir that in. And I think this gravy is a nice rich brown, but if it's not as brown as you would like, you can always add a dot or two of Kitchen Boutique browning sauce, or you can add just a drop of soy sauce or Worcestershire sauce. That'll give it a little bit of brown color, but it shouldn't overpower the flavor because you just need a drop to give it a little bit more of a brown color. But I'm thinking this looks pretty darn good. I'm not going to add any coloring to it at all. The thing about gravy making is you want to keep an eye on it because you don't want it to scorch. There's nothing worse than scorched gravy. So keep an eye on it and stir it almost continuously. You can see this is starting to thicken up. So now is the time to really keep an eye on it. Alright, so the gravy is done. I'm going to go ahead and pour it into the bowl. That way it can cool there. My husband cut the whole turkey breast in half. So this is just half, and I've got the other half of the turkey breast elsewhere. And now we'll just pour a little of our gravy over it. So here you go. Absolutely amazing. For more holiday preparation and budget-friendly meals, just click or tap the link on the screen. It's Sunday, and for today's Sunday dinner, I am making a roast chicken, only this time I'm making a roast chicken in the air fryer. Now, before we get started, let me be sure to say that when I am making roast chicken, the two things that I always have handy is my bottle of Clorox Kitchen Cleanup and some paper towels. That way, if I have any chicken juice that gets dropped anywhere, I'm going to clean it up with the paper towel and my Clorox cleanup. I am not going to use my dishcloth because I don't want to get that chicken juice in the dishcloth, then I'm using that dishcloth and wiping it around other places. No. Even though I'm going to change out the dishcloths once I'm all done in the kitchen, I start with the paper towels just in case there's anything on the sink or on the counter that I need to take care of. Okay, so now let's get to roasting that chicken. So I'll put this grocery bag on the other side so I can put any discards in that. And then I'll get my chicken out of the package that it came in. And I'll check to see if there's any innards. And here's a chicken neck, some giblets, and it looks like that's it. I can feel my way all the way through and there's nothing else down there. So I'm going to wash my hands and get a bowl out to put those giblets in. I didn't realize those were going to be in there, but I always check for just in case. Well, I'm going to put the chicken neck in the bowl. I'm not going to use those giblets. I don't use much organ meat anymore. Then I'm going to come over here and check my chicken and see if there's any discolorations. Don't see any. So I'll give it a gentle rinse, just a gentle rinse. Now, the USDA does not recommend rinsing your chicken. They say just unwrap it and cook it. Any bacteria will be killed in cooking. And whereas I go by most of the things they tell me, for some reason I just can't not wash my chicken. I just have to. So I will give this chicken just a good rinse inside and out. Notice I'm using very, very low water stream, but you don't have to do this part. Using my arms to kind of move that around. And then while my hands are here, I'm going to get them underneath this chicken. Or rather, get them underneath the skin of the chicken. And you can use a spoon, but you can also just kind of use your hands to get under there, close around underneath where the legs are, because we're going to be putting our butter and other seasonings there. And I'm going to come around to the back. And again, I'm just kind of getting my fingers underneath there. And I'm doing this over the sink so that I can just kind of not have to worry about doing this at the counter and then maybe splashing stuff over there. So just getting it all underneath there, making sure that I don't tear the skin because I don't want to do that. But get close to the wings. I'm going to turn the water back on real quick, just a little bit. Looks like I tore that a little bit right there. Didn't mean to do that. Now I'm going to let it drain here. Then I'm going to get it moved over to the counter where I'm going to work with it. And I am so sorry. I forgot to bring you along when I was putting the spices together. But I've got a little black pepper, some onion powder, some sage, some paprika, lemon and pepper seasoning, thyme, and then some garlic powder. And I'm going to whisk this all together. And then I'll add a little bit of oil. And I'm going to rub this all over the inside and the outside of my chicken. So I'm going to add a little bit of oil now to this. About 2 tablespoons of oil. And this is just really going to coat that chicken and really give it a great flavor. And these are the spices that I typically use on my roasted chicken. I might add just a tad bit more paprika. Well, that'll just give it great color and great flavor. And I've still got my little bag in the sink to put in any trash or discards that I might have. So I can drop these paper towels right in that little discard bag so that I can get that all cleaned up when I'm done. I'm going to take some of this seasoning mix and rub it under the skin of my chicken. And I'm also going to rub some on the inside the cavity, as well as all over the outside. And I dried the skin off just so that when I applied this oil, it would just have a nice crisp finish coming out of that air fryer. And I wanted to do this chicken in the air fryer because I know some of you are thinking about doing a roast chicken for the holiday instead of a turkey. So I wanted to give you a couple of options. And I put all of my spices, except for a little salt, in this bowl because I didn't want to be touching all those spice containers with my hands that have been holding this poultry or touching this poultry. Now I'm going to tuck my chicken wings underneath the bird. And then I'm going to try to get my legs tied up. And I can tell you what, trussing up this bird is always a trick. But that just helps you to get things roasted evenly. So got those. Turn it over for a second and okay. This video is brought to you by Aprondiva. Pretty and practical, we believe that an apron can be a homemaker's best accessory. Visit us at www.aprondiva.com. I've got some fresh rosemary here. And I'll also just kind of smush up some garlic and just put that in the cavity of the chicken. This will just really imbue it with great flavor. There we go. There's the garlic. And then I'm just going to go with half an onion. Now, if this was a turkey, I would put the whole onion inside, but it's not. It's just a chicken, and it's much smaller, so I'm just going to go with a half an onion. And you guys know I got to have some carrot. And you guys know I got to have some celery in there. So, now I am going to stuff the cavity of this chicken with our fresh herbs of rosemary, some garlic, onion, as well as celery. And then some of the garlic I'm just going to tuck down in these little crevices here. And now I'm going to put this chicken down inside this fry pan with the breast side down. Now I'm going to set this in the fridge for about 20 to 30 minutes just to kind of ensure a crispy skin. So I'll come back. I'm going to just go ahead and wash these up while I've got that sitting in the fridge. And I'm going to use my Viva cloth-like paper towels to do that, because I don't want to get any of that poultry juice on my dishcloth. Whereas with these Viva cloth-like paper towels, I can just dispose of them once I'm done. And this is a glass cutting board. My husband got it for me. He went to an art museum about 10 or 15 years, well, 15 or 20 years ago, and picked this up for me, and I use it sparingly. I probably don't use it as often as I could, but when I am cooking when I am handling poultry or other meat, I will use it, because I don't like to use this to put raw meat on the cutting board that I use for my veggies. I keep that one strictly for veggies, but I do have a couple that I use just for when I'm working with meat. I'm noisy today. And I have got a hands-free trash can. So when I get ready to put stuff in there, especially when it's like goofy stuff, like this chicken juice on these paper towels, I don't have to handle the lid or step on anything like that. You know, just wave my hand over it, it's hands-free, and it opens up and I can drop them in. And setting that chicken in the fridge for about 30 minutes just allows me to kind of get this cleaned up and get the camera moved around so that I can show you the next step. And as I finish up cleaning up the sink, notice I'm cleaning up the handle. If I touch the little button under there, I'm cleaning up this whole area, as well as the scissors that I use to cut the bag open with. I sprayed that Clorox cleanup on there and I let it sit on there for about 30 seconds. And then I can just wipe that right off and it'll be good to go. And I'm cleaning up under here, everywhere that I might have touched. And then once I get that chicken in the air fryer, I'll wipe down that whole counter, just in case I splashed any chicken juice. And then any dish towels that I may have had out while I was working, I'll put in the laundry and get out fresh ones. And then I'll give the sink one more spray and then just let that sit. Oh, and almost forgot to wipe down this hand wash. And you want to be sure to wash that too, because you know I touched this a couple of times while I was getting ready. So now I'm just going to let that sit there. So now I'm going to just let that sit there because I really don't want any cross-contamination. Now, in case you're thinking to yourself, why is she showing us how to wash our hands? And why is she showing us how she washes down her sink? We know to do that. Well, you may, but there are a lot of young homemakers who follow me who are just learning their home cooking skill set, and they don't know that you have to wash your hands continuously when you're working with raw poultry and raw meat. And then here's the other thing too. You might be saying, well, why don't you just wear gloves and you don't have to worry about it? Well, gloves are like a false sense of security. People that wear gloves think that because they have gloves on, they're protected, and then they just still aren't careful and they touch everything and they still cross-contaminate. So you're more careful in your home if you are washing your hands as you should. So, okay, I'm going to get that chicken out of the fridge and then we'll get on to part 2. Now I've got the Bella Pro Series 8-quart air fryer. My sister gave it to me for Christmas last year, and whereas the hubby and I have enjoyed using it, it just dawned on me that I've never shared using it with all of you. And I know that some of you are looking for options on how to roast a chicken or maybe even a turkey breast this holiday season. So I thought I would let you see how I can use it to roast this chicken. So let me just bring you up close one more time and let you see how I've got the chicken in here on its breast side down. So let me do that real quick. So there you go. You can see there the chicken is breast side down. And I tore the skin accidentally. So now I'm going to slip this in. And now the touch screen comes up. I'm going to turn it on. And then I'm going to choose the chicken option, and I'm going to increase the time to 30 minutes. And it's set at 360 degrees for chicken according to the Bella Pro Series air fryer, and it is going to cook for 30 minutes. So after it cooks for 30 minutes, I'm going to remove the air fryer basket and then flip the chicken over, and then I'm going to probably sprinkle a few more seasonings on the breast of the chicken, and then I'll pop it back in for another 30 minutes, and then I'll check the temperature to see how it's looking. So I'll come back in 30 minutes. Now while the chicken is roasting in the air fryer, I'm going to go ahead and get started on this Brussels sprouts with bacon and walnuts. We are going to have this as one of our side dishes, and it is a Weight Watcher recipe and only 3 points per serving. And I thought I'd better cook these Brussels sprouts today because they've been in the fridge for a little while. So when I shopped my shelves, which included shopping my refrigerator shelves, I thought, uh-oh, gotta cook those Brussels sprouts before they go bad. So let's get that started. These are some large Brussels sprouts. I'm going to cut them into quarters. When my kids were little, they used to turn up their noses at Brussels sprouts. We told them they were baby cabbages. They were more likely to eat them that way. In case you're wondering what that noise was, the hubby just walked through.
What?
Yeah, he's still talking. He's always getting after me about chopping. He's bought me several little devices to chop with, but you can't chop Brussels sprouts with those devices. I'm just cutting these in half. Okay, the first 30 minutes have cooked. And the nice thing about this is there's no hot part on this top end. Oh my goodness, look at this. Now I gotta get it flipped over. There we go. So now it's flipped over. Oh, it smells really good. I'm going to sprinkle just a little salt on that because I did not put any salt in it before. And just a little bit of paprika. Just a little bit. Give it a nice bright color. A little bit of pepper on top. And just a little bit of fresh rosemary on top. I like rosemary on chicken. So now we're going to pop this back in. Set it on chicken. And I've increased the time to 40 minutes. going to put these Brussels sprouts into this bowl, and then I'm going to cut these leeks. The recipe calls for shallots, which I don't have, but leeks are a good substitute. So I've cleaned them really well, split them down the middle, rinsed them to try to make sure I got all the sand out, and I'm cutting them into a 1/2 inch little circlets. And I'm going to put those in the bowl with the Brussels sprouts. And these are some of my Trader Joe finds. You know, I got a couple comments from people that were like, you didn't make the stuff, you didn't cook the things you got at Trader Joe's. Well, I just hadn't gotten around to it yet, but now I am. So there'll be leeks in here and Brussels sprouts that I got at Trader Joe's. And like I said, the recipe did call for shallots, which I don't have any of, but you can sub shallots for onions, leeks, chives, and my chives are still growing, but they've kind of gone to flowering, so I don't know what their flavor might be like. And as I said, I did shop my shelves, which were in my fridge this time, and I needed to use these leeks. So I'll get these leeks and the Brussels sprouts tossed in some olive oil and a little seasoning, and then get them into the oven to roast. And we'll have these along with mashed potatoes and gravy and our roasted chicken. Now I'll get these tossed just a little bit. So I need a couple of tablespoons of olive oil, and that was about all that I had in this bottle. And I'm just going to give these a good toss. And then I'm going to spread them on the baking sheet and toss them some more. Going to sprinkle this with a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, and I'm going to give it another good toss. And while this is in the oven roasting, I'll get the bacon ready. Okay, let's pop this in the oven. Now that's going to stay in the oven for about 20 minutes at 450, and that's about how long it's going to take for that roasted chicken to come out. So I'll come back and let you see what's what. All right, let's take this out and test it with the thermometer to see how it's doing. Okay, so it needs to be at 165 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit, and it is not. It is right around 158, not quite 160. So it needs to go back in. So I think what I'm going to do is turn it over. Because the front of it is starting to get a little brown. So I'm going to turn it over. Pop it back in there. Bacon looks pretty good. I'll cut the bacon into like about 1/2-inch pieces. And then toss this. And it's a Weight Watchers recipe, so it's certainly friendly to my diet. 1/2 cup serving is 3 points. So I'm pretty sure hubby and I will enjoy this meal. Now give this a good toss so that the bacon is just all mixed in with the Brussels sprouts. And then I'll set it aside with the lid over it so it can stay warm. That's my lid. Oh, I've got some biscuits in the freezer, or I had some in the freezer. So I'm going to take out 4 of those for us to have, well, today's dinner. I'll put those in the oven to warm up. Okay, I've checked the temperature again, and it is well above 160. It is at like 185. That was in a thigh, and I turned it over because the up front was getting a little bit brown. So here's the back side, and it is looking pretty good. Now we'll get this turned over. Oh yeah, I'm so glad that I turned it over. So there it is, turned over, and it's still an awful crispy. Let me check the temperature, and from the front, temperature is about 178, almost at 180, and I'm down in the joint. How's that? Down in the joint, it's like right at 160. I'm going to put it back in for another 5 minutes. Meanwhile, I'm going to work on some gravy. Going to add just a little bit of fat, which is in the form of butter. I haven't strained out all my drippings yet from my chicken, So I'll get some of that in here in just a little bit, but I wanted to go ahead and get this butter melting. Then I'm going to add a little bit of flour to my butter and let that flour cook off. And I'm going to turn this down just a little bit because you saw that butter was getting a little brown. And get that flour cooked off. And I'm going to add a little bit of chicken broth. So I got a little bit of the pan drippings off of that chicken and got that in here. So that's going to give this some great flavor. So now we got the fat. We got the fat, we got the flour, and then we have some of the drippings. I'm going to let that just kind of simmer for a bit. Now this gravy is looking pretty darn good. It's nice and brown. Now again, chicken gravy is going to be a lighter brown than others, but it's a nice rich color. And let's just see how it's looking. See there? It's nice and thick. At least it's thick enough. And one of the secrets to gravy is to keep stirring because you do not want to let it scorch. If you scorch the gravy, you just have to toss it out and start all over again. So I'm going to turn the heat off and set this off so this gravy is ready. So just waiting on that chicken to come out. I did put a couple extra minutes on it. Alright, so it's reading 180 degrees in that thigh joint. So it looks pretty good. The chicken skin is nice and crisp. So let's get this string off of it. Now I will remind you guys that the instructions said that I could do something up to 4.5 pounds. And I actually did a 5.5 pound chicken because that's what I had. So I'm going to let this chicken stand for about 5 minutes while I get the table ready, and then I'll come and I'll slice into it and we'll see what's what. Alright, let's cut into this bad boy. Let's start over here since this is where I was sticking the and this is why I kept putting it back in. I wanted to make sure that it was cooked all the way through, and it has. There's no pink in there. It's nicely cooked down in there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that part off because my husband tends to like that part of the chicken. And then you can see all in there, it is nicely cooked. Now inside we have the onions and the herbs, so I can get those out. Because we won't be eating those. But they will have flavored the chicken nicely. And then let's cut into the breast. See how that's looking. So here's the breast, which is what I tend to like. And it looks like it's nice and moist, but it's cooked all the way through. Let's taste the piece. It's got great flavor. Now go ahead and plate everything up. Little mashed potatoes. A little gravy. And then here are our Brussels sprouts with leeks and bacon. So the kitchen is cleaned up and I was about to put everything away, and I thought I would just share with you a little bit about, first of all, what I used to put these things away, and then our leftovers. So I took 4 biscuits out of the freezer, but we only ate 2 of them. So I left these 2 out, and maybe we'll have them in the morning for breakfast. But here is some of the mashed potatoes. This is the Brussels sprouts with the leeks, and I realized that I forgot to put the walnuts in. When I was putting some things away, I thought, oh shoot, this was supposed to be walnuts in with the Brussels sprouts, the leeks, and the bacon, and I forgot those. So when I heat the Brussels sprouts up the next time, I'll put the walnuts in. So there's that. And of course, my cranberry sauce. And then I put the leftover chicken in here. I cut it in half and then put the half and a quarter in here. So this manages to put things away nicely. And I tell you what, it is difficult to put away food in the refrigerator for proper storage if you don't have the right storage solutions. So these Rubbermaid Brilliance, the leak-proof storage containers, work out beautifully for me, and so there are those. And then of course I made that most delicious chicken gravy, and I've got this much gravy left, and we can have gravy tomorrow and then probably gravy for later on in the week. But probably what I may end up having to do is put some of this gravy in the freezer, because I don't see how we're going to be able to use it all. And then I also want to show you a new saucepan that I have. I have one saucepan that I use most of the time, and it is my Curtis Stone Duradiamond saucepan. And I had another saucepan that was similar to this, and I gave it away to someone who needed some cookware, because I thought, oh, I don't use it very much, so I'll give her this size. Well, as soon as I gave it away, I realized, whereas I didn't use this size saucepan often because I typically use my Curtis Stone pan, I used it when I needed it. And I needed one for if I'm making gravy in one little saucepan and I need another one to put maybe a small amount of, say, corn or something like that in it, I needed two. So I ordered this one, and I ordered this one on Amazon. It was just $14.99, and it worked out really well. In this video, I am making another family favorite, peach cobbler, and it's going to be oh so delicious. I like a really buttery crust on my peach cobbler, and I like it to be soaked in peachy sauce goodness. So you're going to see a lot of juice or a lot of sauce in this peach cobbler. Sometimes I just like a crust on the top, and sometimes I like the crust on the top and bottom, because the more crust you have, the more it can soak up that peachy sauce goodness. So we're going to have a double crust on this cobbler. So we're going to need 2½ cups of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and a teaspoon of salt. And then we're just going to whisk that together. Give that a good whisk just so we can get those all mixed throughout. And I'm going to be using 2 sticks of butter, and I've had my butter in the freezer for a bit because I like for my butter to be good and cold. And I'm going to cut that butter up into little cubes, and then I'm going to work it into this flour mixture. I'm going to set that back just for a second. And now I'm going to cut my butter into cubes. And 2 sticks of butter is 1 cup. If you don't want to use this much butter, you could go with 1 stick of butter, which is a 1/2 cup, and then a 1/2 cup of shortening. And this butter is unsalted. I want to make sure I say that. Now we're going to add our butter to our flour mixture. Now you can use a pastry cutter to cut this butter into the flour mixture. But if you don't have one, it's okay. And actually, I prefer to do mine the old-fashioned way. I just take a knife, or rather 2 knives, and just cut the butter into the flour mixture. And once it gets cut up to where I think it's good, I might even rub it just a little bit. But you want a nice crumbly mixture. Now, in case you're wondering what did I mean by rub it, you just pick up the flour and the butter mixture and you just rub it together like that. And that just really kind of helps to get it into the flour. You want a nice crumbly little mixture, kind of like really lumpy cornmeal. Now some people like to use a fork, and they just take the fork and you just kind of mash the butter into the flour, and you just kind of keep going around the dish like that. And I can certainly feel the butter start to soften up, and I'm getting more of the consistency that I'm looking for. And then once I get it to where I want it, get this butter cut in, I'll add my water. I'll add almost a half a cup of water, but not quite. I'll just sprinkle it in a little at a time once I've got my butter nicely cut in. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Look at that. It's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to start to sprinkle in my ice water. Just going to knead it, and it's still a little sticky, but I can see it's coming together. Now that I've got it out of the bowl, I'll just put it on this lightly floured surface and just knead it gently. And it's come together nicely. I'm liking the way it's feeling. Feels nice and soft. Yeah, I'm loving this. Alright, so I've got it in a nice little ball. You can kind of see some of the lumps of butter there in the crust mixture. And I'm going to put this in the refrigerator and let it chill for about 30 minutes while I make my peach mixture. I've got everything cleaned up now, so I'm going to go ahead and get this dish buttered. And I like to use this dish for cobblers. It's nice and deep. So I'll set it back there. And now we'll get started on the peach cobbler filling. I'll just drain the juice off of one of these cans of peaches and reserve it just in case I need it later. Because as I said, I like a lot of juicy peach sauce in my cobbler. And I've got 2 of these 29-ounce cans of peaches. One is draining and one is not. Also going to add my sugar, and there's a cup of white sugar. And I've also got a half a cup of brown sugar, teaspoon of nutmeg, teaspoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of lemon juice. I just kind of like the tartness that the lemon juice adds. And 2 tablespoons of butter. And I give that all a good stir. I'm going to set it on medium heat for about 20 minutes and then we'll come back and give it a taste. These have been cooking for about 25 minutes and I like to check to see if I can cut the peach with a wooden spoon. If I can do that, I know it's time to turn it down to a simmer and get my crust ready. Got my dough out the fridge, so I'll get some flour on my counter so that I can use that. Flour my rolling pin. Now we'll get this dough cut in half. I put the other half in the fridge until I was ready to work with it. So now I'm going to get this rolled out. And this is for my bottom crust. I've got lots of juice in mine cobbler. And I want to be able to soak up all of that goodness. And let me get my dish. That way I know what I'm working towards. I wanted to get about 1/8 inch thick, just not very thick at all. Now I saw this recipe for using a brown sugar and cinnamon mixture on the crust that goes on the bottom, so I'm going to give that a try. I've not tried that before, but I do like cinnamon and I love brown sugar. So I'm going to give that a try. This is looking pretty good. And you just kind of bring it back to you, just back and forth. Keeping the rolling pin lightly floured as needed. And then when you're ready to lift it, it's sticking a little bit, so I might need to get some help here. I could have floured it a little better, it looks like. But I'll get it folded in half that way. Fold it that way. I like to fold it into quarters. And then I put half in the dish that way and just kind of unfold it. And my dish has been buttered so that I've got room to maneuver it. Looks like I need a little bit more up on the sides. Trying not to tear it. And if you didn't want to make your own pie crust, you wouldn't have to. You could just buy a box of Pillsbury pie crust that has 2 pie crusts already made, and all you got to do is roll them out. And I have been known to do that, but I do enjoy making my own when I have the time. I'm going to pull this up just a little bit more because once it starts to bake, it's going to shrink down just a little bit. Now I found the idea to put the cinnamon sugar combination on the bottom of the pie crust from a website called Divas Can Cook. And she was making a peach cobbler too. Whereas I like cinnamon, I don't like too much. Okay, so set that aside. And I'll get the other pie crust ready. I'll try to get a little bit more flour. And I like to go towards me and away from me. And since I'm not trying to do a circle, I want this to be more linear. Okay. We'll get the strips made to put on top of the dish. I'll just get these rolled up and set aside so they don't stick to the counter as you saw the other one did. Now it's time to pour this in. Okay, now let's get that crust across the top. If you're new to my channel, I'd love to have you join the TNT community. I teach traditional homemaking for today's homemaker. Cooking, cleaning, laundry, all things needed to make and keep a home. I can teach you to be a traditional homemaker in an untraditional world. So hit that subscribe button. So I've got it set for 350 and I'm going to let it bake for about an hour. And yes, I have entirely too much juice in that dish. And I knew it when I poured it in there. But I did it anyway. So that's one of the reasons why I put that cookie sheet underneath to catch the drippings that runs off. And then once it's probably baked for about, 15-20 minutes, I'll brush the top of it with some melted butter and sprinkle some of that brown sugar and cinnamon topping on top of that. So welcome back. This butter topping with the sprinkled on brown sugar is just going to make this peach cobbler taste all the more amazing. And then back in the oven it goes. And you see I've got 2 cookie sheets working now. One so that I don't get anything on the door, and one that I don't get any drips in the oven. Look at that. Doesn't it look absolutely delicious? I can't wait to dig into it, but I'm going to have to because it's pretty darn hot and I don't want to burn my mouth. So I'm going to let this cool and then I'll come back and I'll scoop a little bit of it out and give it a taste. But I already tasted the sauce, so I already know it's going to taste absolutely delicious, but now I just need some of that delicious buttery crust along with that peachy sauce. And here's my question for you. How do you like your peach cobbler? Do you like one with the top crust and the bottom crust? Or do you just like a top crust? I was talking with a couple ladies at the beauty shop yesterday and we were talking about how to make peach cobbler. And Mrs. Russell said she doesn't put a crust on the bottom. She just likes a top crust because the bottom crust gets all soggy. And I'm like, I like that juiciness in that bottom crust. My beautician said crust on the top only. And then, of course, Mrs. Russell said you gotta make peach cobbler with fresh peaches. And I'm like, Mrs. Russell, where are you gonna get fresh peaches at this time of the year? She said she froze some. She put some in the freezer so she'd have them ready for peach cobblers and peach pie in the winter. Well, I missed peach season, so canned peaches it was. And my friend, my beautician, said she only uses canned peaches. So there's always a little bit of a discussion about who likes this, who likes that, but they always turn out beautifully. So again, my question to you is, do you like yours with the crust on top only? Or do you like a crust on the top and the bottom? Or do you like it any way you can get it, like I do? If you're looking for the perfect dessert for a Sunday dinner or for a holiday table, peach cobbler is always appropriate. No one ever gets up from the table hungry if there's peach cobbler for dessert. Listen to that. Oh, there's plenty of sauce. Hot dog. Plenty of sauce. Amazing. Now the only thing missing is a scoop of vanilla ice cream on top. And let's take care of that right now.